Hi everyone, this is the new crime story video for you. So don't waste the time, let's go to the video.
Hello everyone, my name is David. Today we are going to take a look at another real story with you. So if a person commits a crime, how does the police reach him? There are different ways, either through his family, through a friend or relative, through the place where he works, or else by using technical surveillance. That means his phone, mobile, bank account, basically any record that is registered somewhere. Through these sources, the police can track him. The police can reach up to that point. Now imagine a person who knows that these are the things through which the police can track him. He erases all of them, meaning he wipes out his entire identity and then hides himself somewhere among a population of billion, maybe in a small town or in any city. How would the police reach him then? Today's story is about such a killer, a man who erased every single trace that could have led the police to him. But he made just one small mistake, and after 20 years, when he was completely sure that the police must have forgotten about him, that the case file must be lost somewhere. This story is about an Air Force clerk. His name is Vinod Sharma. Vinod Sharma, originally from Agra, but when he joined the Air Force, his posting was first in Jammu Kashmir, then in Uttar Pradesh, and later in Karnataka. He had joined the Air Force in 1996. After serving for 6 years with postings in Kashmir, Karnataka, and Uttar Pradesh, in the year 2000, Vinod Sharma was posted to Gujarat at the Air Force Station in Gandhinagar. There, he continued his job, and in Gandhinagar, he rented a house to live in. Coincidentally, a woman happened to be living next door to him. She was married and had 2 daughters. Her name was Urmila. During their interactions and meetings, Vinod Sharma fell in love with Urmila, and even though she was married, Urmila also fell in love with him. Urmila's husband had apparently left her and gone somewhere, and when the two developed feelings for each other, they decided that they would get married. Vinod Sharma even promised to accept her 2 daughters as his own. After that, they got married. After marriage, they continued living there, but a few years later, Vinod Sharma was suddenly transferred from Gandhinagar to Bareilly. He stayed in Bareilly for 2 years, and after those 2 years, he returned to Gandhinagar. When Vinod Sharma came back to Gandhinagar, at that time the salary of an Air Force clerk was very low. Urmila, being from Gujarat, told him that there was a lot of money in diamond polishing and related businesses. She suggested, "Why don't you leave this Air Force clerk job and start some business of your own?" This idea struck a chord with Vinod Sharma. He agreed and said, "All right, let's do it." After that, the two of them left Gandhinagar and moved to another city. In another city, they rented a house, and Vinod Sharma started his own business there. For a while, everything seemed to be going well, but the house they had rented belonged to a landlord who himself owned a shop, a diamond polishing business. So many of the staff who worked at the landlord's diamond polishing shop would often come to his house. Among them was one particular staff member who visited frequently. Over time, Vinod Sharma's wife, Urmila, started having an affair with this man. Slowly, Vinod came to know about it. This led to serious arguments between him and Urmila. By then, Vinod and Urmila also had a son together, along with the 2 daughters she already had from her first marriage. Now it was 3 children in the family. When Vinod discovered Urmila's affair, fights between husband and wife became a daily routine. The home, which once looked like a place of new beginnings, started turning into a battlefield of suspicion, anger, and broken trust. Neighbors, too, began noticing the constant tension in the house. And behind closed doors, Vinod's frustration and rage kept building a storm that was about to explode with unimaginable consequences. Coincidentally, on December 2004, Vinod Sharma came home. As soon as he reached, he saw the very same man, the one who was having an affair with his wife, walking out of his house. A wave of rage swept over him. He stormed inside and confronted his wife, Urmila. She tried to give some explanation, but by then, Vinod's anger had crossed all limits. In a fit of uncontrollable fury, he grabbed her by the throat and began strangling her. But the rage didn't stop there. Inside the house, there was an iron rod lying around. Vinod picked it up and struck Urmila on the head with full force. Urmila collapsed, and within moments she was dead on the spot. At that instant, Vinod realized what had happened. His own hands had committed murder. The woman he once loved, whom he had married against all odds, lay lifeless in front of him. The home that once echoed with family life was now a crime scene. It was no longer just a fight between husband and wife. It had turned into a crime that would haunt him for the next 2 decades. At that time, Urmila's 2 daughters were staying with their grandmother. In the house, only her little son was present, just a small child. After killing his wife, Vinod picked up his young son, gathered a few essential belongings, and left the house. He went straight to the station, boarded a train, and traveled directly to his hometown. The next day, the landlord came to Vinod's house for some work. He knocked several times, but there was no response. Growing suspicious, he unlocked the door and went inside. What he saw shocked him. Urmila's body was lying there, drenched in blood. Terrified, the landlord immediately called the police. Within no time, officers arrived at the scene. Looking at the condition of the body, the blood patterns, and the signs of struggle, the police were quick to conclude that this was a case of brutal murder. But Vinod was nowhere to be found. He had vanished with his son, leaving behind nothing but a lifeless body and a trail that seemed to go cold from day one. For the police, it was the beginning of a long and difficult manhunt, a chase that would span across 2 decades. And the husband was missing. It was soon discovered that he hadn't reported to work either, so the first suspicion naturally fell on him. A team from the Gujarat police immediately swung into action. When Vinod had rented the house, he had provided multiple addresses and documents, including his identity card. Through those papers, the police traced his permanent address and learned that he was originally from Agra. A police team rushed to Agra, but when they reached his home, Vinod was nowhere to be found. The team camped there for days, hoping he would eventually return so they could catch him. But he never came. Slowly, search efforts spread wider. Police began checking every possible, digging into records and tracking relatives. But Vinod Sharma had disappeared like a shadow. Not a single clue was left behind. Time kept passing, and with each day, Vinod seemed to be slipping further into the darkness. For the police, it felt as if he had simply evaporated into thin air like a ghost who left no trace. What they didn't know then was that this disappearance would stretch into not just months or years. From 2004, the search went on until 2024 arrived. Almost 20 years had gone by, and in all that time there was no trace of Vinod Sharma. The police tried everything, every possible lead, every angle, hoping something would turn up. But the shocking part was this: the police didn't even have a single photograph of Vinod Sharma. When investigators had searched his house in Surat, they found no pictures at all, and when they went to his hometown, they found nothing there either. So the police were left with a case file that didn't even have the suspect's face. And even if they had somehow gotten a picture, what difference would it have made after 20 years? A man's face changes. He grows older, and in the crowd of billion, he could simply disappear. Slowly, police began losing hope. The case was pushed aside, gathering dust in the shelves of forgotten files. For them, Vinod Sharma had vanished into thin air, and the murder of Urmila was becoming just another unsolved cold case. But what no one realized was that fate had other plans. A single mistake by Vinod was waiting to bring him back into the light, even after 2 decades of darkness. After the case was shelved, Vinod Sharma disappeared from everyone's memory. People slowly forgot him, as if he had never existed. But then, just last year, a new police captain took charge. He ordered his officers to reopen old unsolved cases and bring the files out of storage. Among those files was the Urmila murder case, still marked by one glaring detail. The killer, Vinod Sharma, had never been caught. The captain decided, let's give this another try. He formed a special team and instructed them to study the case thoroughly. Back in 2004, records had shown that Vinod was originally from Agra. So, even after 20 years, a police team was once again sent there, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he might have returned, thinking the police had long forgotten. But there was no success. Investigations revealed that in all those years, Vinod had never contacted his family, never visited his relatives, never even spoken of anyone. It was as if he had cut off every thread that could link him to his past. For the police, this only deepened the mystery. How could a man survive in a country of more than 1 billion people for 2 decades without leaving a single trace? The answer was still hidden, but the chase was about to heat up again. There wasn't even a single relative who could have been in touch with him. The police collected several phone numbers of people distantly connected to him and even put them under surveillance, but not one of them looked suspicious. During surveillance, every single call that raised doubts was checked thoroughly. Yet all those numbers either belonged to another people. Vinod Sharma was nowhere to be found. At that point, it felt like, even after 20 long years, the police were still left empty-handed. But the captain's order was clear. This case must be solved. At least make every possible attempt. And so the efforts continued. The team decided to try a different approach. They thought, let's dig deeper into Vinod Sharma's records. We know he once lived in Surat. We know he served in the Air Force. His personal details must be somewhere. If he has managed to disappear, there has to be some loose thread, maybe a friend, a distant relative, or some place he could be hiding. It was a painstaking process, but the investigators knew that in cases like this, even a single overlooked detail could be the crack that brings down the wall of secrecy Vinod had built around himself for 20 years. There was no solid information anywhere. The police checked all the old bank account details that Vinod Sharma had provided when he was in the Air Force. They tried to trace whether he had kept any of those accounts active, but nothing useful turned up. They looked into his identity cards records, but the address linked to it was long outdated and had no meaning anymore. They searched through every GST number registered under the name Vinod Sharma, but there were simply too many. The investigation turned into a headache. Bank details, identity cards, GST, all dead ends. The police even tried tracing possible mobile numbers and landlines, digging through telephone directories. But the name Vinod Sharma was far too common. There were thousands of people with the same name. Yet the police could not give up because they knew, hidden somewhere in that massive crowd, was the real Vinod Sharma, living under the radar for 20 years, believing that he had outsmarted the law. But as history has shown in countless manhunts, even the most careful fugitive makes a mistake, and that one mistake was all the police were waiting for. But still, the police kept trying, hoping that somewhere, somehow, they would find a lead. Yet, no success came their way. They checked the crime records of the entire state, even searched the national database to see if any prisoner named Vinod Sharma had ever been caught. But none of them turned out to be the Vinod Sharma they were looking for. They went through mobile phone data, social media accounts, and every possible digital footprint. In short, they did everything that could be done, yet nothing worked. Every lead ended in disappointment. And then one day, a police officer had a sudden thought. He said, "Sir, remember March 2020 when COVID-19 hit? The way people were dying, and by 2021, how scared everyone was. There was a rush everywhere to get vaccinated. So at the very least, anyone who lived through the pandemic must have gotten vaccinated. And if he did, his record should be there." That single idea would become the turning point, the missing key in a mystery that had been unsolved for many years. And if Vinod Sharma was still alive, because there was always this doubt, after 20 years, who knew if he was even alive then? Surely, he must have taken the COVID-19 vaccine. So the officers turned to the vaccination portal, where every individual's details were recorded. They said, "Let's check how many people named Vinod Sharma in this country took the vaccine." Of course, Vinod Sharma was such a common name that hundreds of entries appeared, so they decided to shortlist them. All right, let's narrow this down to Uttar Pradesh. Let's focus on Agra and other nearby areas. Multiple Vinod Sharmas were pulled out from the database, and separate police teams were assigned to verify them one by one. Wherever there was even the slightest doubt, officers went in person, checking, questioning, eliminating names from the list. The hunt that had once gone cold was suddenly alive again. Whether it was Agra or the surrounding areas, every lead turned out to be someone else. It felt like the police were empty-handed again. But the digging through the COVID vaccination portal continued. And then, finally, one day while checking records, they didn't find Vinod Sharma's name, but they found something unusual. A vaccination certificate under the name Chitra Vinod Sharma. This immediately caught the investigators' attention. They thought, let's try this one too. Where does this person live? The address listed was a town near Agra. For the police, this was the first real clue in years. If this Chitra Vinod Sharma was connected, there was a strong chance that it could actually be Vinod Sharma himself, living under a new identity. And the fact that the location was near Agra, his old hometown, only strengthened their suspicion. After all, Vinod knew that area well, and it would be easier for him to hide in a place he was already familiar with. The hunt was finally pointing toward a breakthrough. So, who was this Chitra? The officers reasoned. If the record showed Chitra Vinod Sharma, it most likely meant that her husband's name was Vinod Sharma. That instantly raised suspicion. The decision was made. Using the address listed on the COVID vaccination certificate, a police team traveled to that area which is written in certificate. Once there, they began quietly searching for Chitra's residence. After some inquiries and careful checking, they finally located her house. But instead of directly knocking as police, they used a clever ruse. Posing as government officers conducting a survey, they knocked on the door. When the woman opened, they asked, "Are you Chitra Vinod Sharma?" She replied, "Yes." They then casually asked her for some personal details, pretending to collect data for official records. After writing a few things down to make it look genuine, they asked, "And who else lives in your house?" That moment was crucial because the answer would confirm whether the man they had been chasing for 20 years, the man who had erased his identity and vanished, was finally within reach. Chitra replied, "We have 2 sons. One of them is 23 years old and working at a job. And my husband, his name is Vinod Sharma." The officers, still keeping up the act, asked casually, "And what does he do?" She answered, "He runs a grocery shop. That's his business." The team nodded and said, "All right, as part of this government survey, it would be helpful if we could also speak to him. Could you take us to him?" Completely unaware that these men were actually police officers, Chitra agreed without hesitation. She said, "Come along. I'll show you the shop right next door. He's sitting there right now." And so, believing them to be government survey workers, Chitra led the officers straight to the grocery shop. When they entered, they saw a middle-aged man sitting behind the counter. He looked ordinary, like any other shopkeeper, but for the police, this was no ordinary man. Their eyes told them that this could very well be Vinod Sharma, the fugitive they had been chasing for 20 years. The police looked at him, but the problem was they had no photograph of Vinod Sharma. How could they be certain that this was really him? They couldn't just arrest him blindly. After all, there were thousands of men named Vinod Sharma. There was no sketch, no photo, no record at all. So the officers kept their cover. They continued the act, saying they were there for a government survey, a welfare scheme under the government. The man answered all their routine questions casually, without any suspicion. When the questioning was over and it seemed like they were about to leave, one officer suddenly turned back. Looking directly at him, he said slowly, Can I ask you something? You're Vinod Sharma, right? The same Vinod Sharma who killed his wife in Surat 20 years ago?" For a moment, silence filled the air. The officer fixed his eyes on the man's face, watching closely. And in that instant, everything changed. The calm, casual expression vanished. The man's face tightened, his eyes gave him away. It was the kind of reaction no one can fake because when you've been hiding a lie for decades, sometimes your face betrays you before your words do. Up until that second, Vinod Sharma had been confident, chatting like nothing was wrong. But the moment he heard those words, the man who killed his wife 20 years ago in Surat, his mask slipped, his body language shifted, his silence confirmed what no photograph ever could. The man in front of them was indeed Vinod Sharma. The moment his face changed, the entire color drained from him. A police officer instantly grabbed his hand and said firmly, "We are from Gujarat Police. We've been hunting you for 20 years. Now it's time to come with us." At first, Vinod tried to deny it. "Sir, you're mistaken. I'm not that Vinod Sharma. Maybe it's someone else," he protested. But before he could continue, his own wife interrupted. She said softly, "Didn't you once work in Surat?" That one line shattered his defense. He looked at his wife's face, and in that moment, his silence spoke louder than any denial. Finally, right there in front of her, he broke down and confessed, "Yes, I am Vinod Sharma. I killed Urmila. After that night, I ran away with my little son. I knew the police would chase me. I saw my name in newspapers, on TV, in discussions everywhere. And that's when I realized a man's biggest enemy is his own identity and the technology that can expose him." He admitted how he survived all these years. "From that very day, I decided I would never use social media. I would never own a mobile phone. Even this shop I run, I never put the GST registration in my name. I erased myself from every system. For 20 years, Vinod Sharma had lived like a ghost in plain sight. No phone, no documents, no digital trace. That was how he stayed ahead of the law. Even that shop was taken in his wife's name. He made sure that there was not a single thing that could ever require his identification or bring his name onto any government record. He never used a mobile phone. He never put his name on the shop board. He never registered for a GST number in his own name. He never opened a bank account under his name. In short, for 20 years, Vinod Sharma killed his own identity and lived like a shadow, fooling the law at every step. But it was just one mistake, his wife's mistake. When she went for the COVID vaccination, on the certificate, she wrote her name as Chitra Vinod Sharma. And that single entry, that tiny trace, became the golden clue for police. When Vinod Sharma was finally arrested, the same little boy he had fled with 20 years ago had now grown up, a 23-year-old young man working in a private company in Gujarat. He had no idea about his father's past. When his father was arrested and taken to Surat on transit remand, the son rushed to Surat, shocked at the truth that unfolded before him. As of now, Vinod Sharma is in judicial custody, but the astonishing part is this: a man who dodged the law and erased his identity for 2 decades was finally caught because of one small slip, a COVID vaccination certificate.
So this was today's story. I hope enjoy the video. So like the video, subscribe channel and hit the bell icon. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.